Political analyst Brian Sobel. Brian, we obviously just heard the conversation with Santa Clara County Supervisor Joe Simitian, who is running to replace Congresswoman Eshoo. And we did focus in early on there about the fact that he has Congresswoman Eshoo's endorsement, which is obviously a major coup for him. What do you see as the impact of that endorsement in terms of separating out from this crowded field and also in terms of fundraising?
Well, the incumbent deciding on who their next person ought to be is huge, and Eshoo supporting him is a real step forward. What he brings to the race, of course, is lengthy experience at every level of government. He's been at the local level, he's been at the supervisorial level, Assembly, the Senate. He's basically done it all, kind of the Swiss Army knife of candidates.
Ready to go on day one.
Absolutely,
that's how Congressman
absolutely.
Eshoo views it.
Yes, absolutely, and for good reason. Congress is very much like our state legislature in the sense of how you have to get along with people, and he referenced that. So he's got a great endorsement there by the incumbent.
Brian, though, when you look at this race, you have 11 candidates, right? And this district is one of the most expensive, one of the wealthiest in California. When you are one of those candidates, what needs to happen for you to kind of separate from the group?
That's the key, Heather, is you have to come out of the pack some way. So a high-profile endorsement is one way. Raising the most money may be another way. Having a program that just separates you from everybody else may be a third way of doing it. But 11 people is a lot of people. So trying to find your lane, which is the key thing, trying to find your lane is very, very difficult. This is why in the case of somebody who's endorsed by the incumbent, good. Yeah. Somebody who's been mayor of San Jose, well, that's good. But if you don't have those kind of bona fides, it's tough to separate yourself.
And remember, this is just the primary, right? I mean, you got to get past this and then on to the general.
And then the game begins.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll obviously continue following this race, but we want to shift gears now and talk about obviously another huge race here in California, and that would be the California Senate race. And the top candidates faced off once again last night in Southern California for a final debate before the March 5th primary election. This debate touched on a number of issues, including the economy, immigration, foreign policy, and the environment.
We need to bring down energy costs. We can do this with a windfall profits tax on oil companies.
What really happened is the overspending in Washington, which caused inflation.
Career politicians haven't focused on our challenges, including the cost of housing, the cost of child care.
People are working 2 and 3 jobs just to pay rent, just to afford child care. We have to think about and talk about a living wage.
All right, so last night, once again, we heard from the 3 Democrats in this race, Representatives Adam Schiff, Barbara Lee, and Katie Porter, and the one Republican, Steve Garvey, the one Republican frontrunner, I should say, and they all made their appeal to the voters last night. They were all asked what they believe should be done to tackle inflation and the high cost of living, and you sort of heard their responses there. Now, I believe we may have another poll to show you, the latest Emerson College poll. We may not have that, but well, we do have it. There you go. Good news. So this is the latest sort of snapshot of where this race stands. You see Congressman Schiff in the lead there with 28% support among voters. Republican Steve Garvey in second place with 22% support. Congresswoman Porter with 16% support. And East Bay Congresswoman Barbara Lee with 9% support from the voters.
Okay, so Brian, I want to talk about this final debate. And do you really see it making any sort of difference? And when you look at those poll numbers, what is it going to take, let's say, for a Congresswoman Barbara Lee to make any headway?
Well, Barbara Lee has not really found traction in this race even from the beginning. If you take Steve Garvey out of that foursome, it's still Schiff, Porter, Lee. So she hasn't been able to really make a big difference in the race. What you're seeing is tons of money being spent, particularly by the Schiff campaign, to get Steve Garvey the momentum that he needs to knock out Porter and Lee, and then Schiff says, I'm home free because this is a blue state.
There's been a lot of criticism about that approach. I mean, what do you make of it?
Well, I think if I'm Barbara Lee or I'm Porter, I say, well, that's not very fair, nice. You know, we're not playing well. We're all Democrats, and you are winnowing us from the field in favor of a Republican because you think that's your
an easier path.
Well, and you know, it may prove to be the easier path.
Yeah, it certainly looks like it could be. How do the other candidates, Barbara Lee and Katie Porter, how do they counteract that? How do they push back?
Yeah.
They can only hope that Democrat voters in the state, who are the vast majority, see this for what it is and see that the front runner is trying to pump up a Republican to take them out of the race and react poorly to that. Right? That's got to be their hope, along with spending money. We know how much money is being spent in the state of California on this race. It's enormous. You cannot now turn on broadcast television without seeing it. You can't turn on your phone without getting a social media hit on it or whatever. There's huge money being spent here.
Yeah. Okay. We want to shift gears for a moment here, Brian, and talk about the race for San Francisco mayor. And it is heating up with a growing field of challengers trying to unseat Mayor London Breed in the November election. Now, earlier this month, former mayor and supervisor Mark Farrell jumped into the race, and we talked a bit about that, Brian. He joins the other top challengers, Supervisor Asha Safai and nonprofit founder Daniel Lurie.
All right, so all of these challengers here to Mayor London Breed really sort of essentially making similar arguments that the mayor has not properly addressed conditions in the city, public safety, homelessness, the drug crisis. How do you think those candidates, those top candidates, are going to have to set themselves apart and prove that they would be able to do a better job than Mayor Breed?
Alex, you're putting your finger on the situation, and that is it's an untenable place right now with respect to homelessness and these other problems. And because of that, the other candidates, other than the current mayor, London Breed, they have to find a way to connect with people in the city on the basis that I can do a better job than the incumbent. But there's a lot of people in San Francisco, we know this from polling and other sources, that aren't excited that the problem can be solved by one person or one administration or even one term. This is a long-range problem that is going to take years to solve.
But it's not enough to just point at the person who's in office and say, I could do a better job, or she's not doing a good enough job at solving these issues. You have to present some solutions, right?
Absolutely. And so for the other three candidates, they're putting forward their record and saying, hey, I have already demonstrated either through my charitable work in the case of Lurie or my time in public office, 9 years as a supervisor in the case of Farrell and 6 months as mayor. I've already done these things, and I'm going to do them again, but I'll do them differently this time, and we'll make a difference.
I want to stay on that topic for a moment, because Mark Farrell, the newest challenger to Mayor London Breed, the day that he made his announcement last week, he appeared here on the 4, and he talked about his record when it comes to homelessness. So let's go ahead now and take a look back at what Mark Farrell said here on the show.
As mayor, I cleared out all of our tenant encampments. We focused and promoted our local economy. We cleaned up our streets, and we invested in our neighborhoods. Again, as mayor, I cleared out all of our tenant encampments in 6 months. I will do it again next year.
That is Mark Farrell making a claim that he really made some progress when it came to homeless encampments. One of his challengers, Daniel Lurie, really going after that claim and disputing it. How difficult is it for someone who has held office to make a claim like that when there is, in fact, a record that may or may not back it up?
And that's going to be the battle. I think in the case of Mark Farrell, he is going to hear from London Breed. He's going to hear from Lurie and the supervisor about the state of the city at the time that he was mayor. Those are bold claims when you say, I fixed a problem, and then 6 months later it fell back into disrepair, and now it's in disrepair, and I'm going to fix it again when I get back into office. It leaves you open to a lot of criticism.
Yeah. Speaking of the public safety issue, because obviously that is front and center, Mayor Breed is pushing a proposition that she believes is going to improve public safety in the city, and that's going to be on the ballot here just next month in March. Prop E, in essence, would loosen restrictions on police pursuits and also make it easier for police to use surveillance cameras to investigate crimes. There's opposition from the ACLU. They're worried about it invading people's privacy and sort of weakening oversight of the police department. The mayor earlier today on Mornings on 2, she made the case as to why voters should approve this proposition.
We've seen incredible preliminary results with using technology on the streets of the Tenderloin in particular. We've made arrests around suspected drug dealers as well as 2 suspected homicide cases. We know that it takes a lot of work and a lot of technology and opportunities to be able to deal with various crime in San Francisco.
All right, so before we get to the election in the mayoral race in November, next month, we're going to have sort of the results of Proposition E that might sort of give us a sense of where voters are on this issue of public safety. And does it give us any gauge on how much support there might be for Mayor Breed?
Yes and no. And the yes is she's behind it, supporting it, and that sort of thing. The no is that this is a chronic problem in San Francisco, that is crime. And so, you know, some people may say, hey, well, it's about time we're doing some of these things. Coming a little late in the game, but I think most big city mayors now across the country have, if they haven't reversed course, they've amended course to say, hey, we need to hire more police officers, we need to have surveillance, we need to have better law enforcement, better prosecution. All these things that the public has been calling for. For a long time, we had some people in the community who were for other solutions, defund police and that sort of thing. Crime rose. People felt unsafe. You're watching mayors all over the country and in San Francisco say, hey, we've got to reverse course here and start really supporting the police in every way that we can.
Yeah, and really the pressure is on Mayor Breed right now.
Absolutely
she faces
it is.
This fierce re-election campaign.
Absolutely.
Brian, a real pleasure to have you with us, sir.
My pleasure.
Break it all
Yep,
down. Appreciate it.